Hello, welcome to No Drop. I'm Jeff Zen. I am very happy to report that I have completed my goal for 2026 and done the biggest climbing ride I've ever done. Just last month, I did a ride where I climbed 40,000 feet. For those of you who are working in metric, that is about 12,000 meters. It was an amazing experience, a huge challenge, but an absolutely beautiful experience that I really, really look back on very, very fondly. I mean, it was a hard ride, absolutely, but all my memories are just of cruising across the mountains. It was out in Malibu, so looking out over the ocean, going up into the mountains, into these very isolated areas. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about that ride in this episode because my friend Tim Mahoney was creating some visual content as he was supporting me during that ride. So once Tim starts to get some of those visuals put together and is getting closer to being finished, I will do a podcast episode, probably part of the Big Ride series, kind of focusing in on just how this 40,000 foot ride went. I definitely think this one counts as a big ride, so that would be pretty appropriate. But it was amazing. I'm so happy. I'm so proud of that effort. One part of that ride I do want to talk about is nutrition went really, really well. I would estimate that I probably ate between 6,500 and 7,000 calories throughout the ride. So nutrition was great. And it was easy to eat. I had an appetite the whole time. I didn't feel bad. It didn't make my stomach upset. Some of the things that can go along with fueling as you're exercising. And that has me thinking about training your fueling or training your nutrition. So much of the conversation that I hear about fueling your rides is, when you do a century, you have to eat throughout the ride. And that is absolutely true. That is a great recommendation. But what I don't hear a lot is talk about, okay, well, how do you make it comfortable to eat when you do a 100-mile ride? My experience has always been that if I am not used to eating, this was back when I was earlier in my cycling, when I was not used to consuming calories as I was exercising, it would make my stomach feel weird. It would kind of make me feel like I had to maybe get off the bike to digest for a while. It just would not be a positive experience. It would be pretty miserable, to be honest. But I did notice that after I started incorporating eating and nutrition into my training rides and actually gave my body an opportunity to adapt to taking in energy, now I can eat on any ride, no matter how big it is. I definitely have foods that I turn to that I know work, so that is still a very important part of this equation. But training and being intentional with this really, really pays off. And so that's an idea that I want to share with everybody, is to invite them to bring fueling into their training rides. When I think back, I think about some of the training that I did to try to make eating easier as I was riding. One thing that I would do, and I would invite everybody to start trying this, is I would have maybe like a 15-mile ride that I was going to do that day. But what I would do is I would make a peanut butter and honey sandwich, and I would fill up a bottle of water. And my goal for that ride would be to ride zone 2. And my goal would be, I'm going to finish this sandwich on my ride, and I'm also going to finish this entire bottle of water. By giving myself a lower stress environment to start adapting to eating, made it so that later on, when I was in these higher stress environments, now I have a system adapted in me, something trained that can actually process these calories as I'm doing an exercise. Maybe there are additional stressors, maybe it's also hot and things like that. All these things are compounding on your body and are sort of using up your fitness bandwidth. The more we can be trained in each one of those individual areas, the easier it is to put all of those pieces together. This is really important in the summer too. We're getting into the summer here. The days are long. Everybody wants to be riding. Maybe you're trying to go into the mountains for the first time on a ride. The more that you can be fueling and providing energy to your body during these big rides, during these big efforts, is going to pay off huge. I've done many episodes on nutrition on this podcast, and I'll link some of those in the notes below. I love talking about nutrition because I feel like it's a game changer for people. This is very low-hanging fruit. This is a very easy thing to connect with. We're not waiting for very complicated muscle adaptations to happen. We're not waiting to increase our cardio capacity or anything like that. Those are things that take a lot of time. Food is easy. We just have to build the ritual. We just have to build the habit. When I think about the systems in the body that can sort of help us in this process, one thing that comes to mind is our microbiome. That is a part of our digestion that adapts not only to our activity, but also to the types of foods that we eat. So as endurance athletes, we are very likely taking in higher amounts of carbohydrates than the regular population. That is adapting your microbiome. So then you actually have bacteria, viruses, fungi. You have things in your body that are helping you process those carbohydrates. Also, just the act of exercise is also influencing your microbiome. So this is a system that is delicate. It takes time to adapt. The microbiome is also in the very early stages of research and sort of understanding. So this is something that is playing a role. To what degree, we don't honestly know right now, but this is one part of the system. Another part of that system would be, I believe, that probably just the act of consuming calories as you're exercising is probably also utilizing your muscles in your digestive tract in a unique way. And by practicing that and giving our body an opportunity to adapt those muscles, to use them as we're also being active, I think that probably pays off. So that would be another reason to fuel during your training rides and give yourself some time to adapt to fueling. But the third thing is what has been the most fascinating to me. And this is what I've been diving down the rabbit hole on and just been blown away. I think this is really, really interesting. And this is the concept of blood volume. Blood volume is essentially the amount of blood that you have in your body. Blood volume and blood flow is really important because blood is essentially the distribution system for everything. When you take in oxygen, it goes into your blood. When you eat calories, they go into your blood. This is a really important system. This is distributing all the resources and also extracting all the waste out of your body. So when we think about blood volume, we as active people already have, 30 to 40% more blood than people who are sedentary. We can already see just in that example that our body and our blood volume is adapting to our activity levels. So the stress that we put on our body consistently, our body is going to adjust and adapt and get better. Now, we're not only thinking about being active, but now we're also thinking about digesting food and distributing energy. So if we think about distributing these things throughout our body, I like to think of this as sort of you have a certain bandwidth that you've trained and you've built into your body. So let's say you are used to just being physically active. That's 100% of your bandwidth. Now, when you try to eat on top of that, you're going to have to lower your level of exertion in order to create the bandwidth that you can also be processing calories. Other things, like I said, can stress this system, depending on how hot it is. To cool your body takes a lot of fluid. There are many different stresses that can be put on this distribution system, that is affecting the bandwidth and what you're actually capable of doing. Something that I learned about this blood volume is that it takes time for this system to adjust. So you have two main parts of your blood volume. One is the plasma, and that is like the watery part of your blood, and the other are the cells that exist in your blood. Those are made in your bone marrow. The plasma can adjust within like 48 to 72 hours, so you can increase that part of your blood volume. The cells, however, the red blood cells that are floating around, that is something that could take potentially weeks or months. That system takes a much longer time to adapt. To sum all of this up, eat during your training rides. I mean, if you could take 3 weeks before you go on a big ride and just practice nutrition, you are probably just then more adapted to do the big ride and to take in fuel on that ride. And we have multiple examples here. The microbiome is adjusting to your activity and your nutrition. You have the muscles along your digestive tract that are very likely adapting in some way. And then we also have this idea of blood volume. And this is definitely something that is changing in relation to your activity level and in relation to the specific stress that you put on it. Summer is here, the time for big rides, for being out all day. We're in it right now. It's my favorite time of year. I'm just thrilled. I hope you can hear just like the joy in my voice as I think about this coming weekend. I have 2 back-to-back 120-mile rides, and I am stoked. But you better believe that I will be fueling not only throughout the rides, but after the rides, before the rides. Nutrition and energy delivery is crucial to this. Without a good connection to nutrition, I would not be able to ride the way that I do. That's all for this episode. I just wanted to do a short one, kind of focused on this idea of training for fueling. Really important concept, something that's paid off huge for me. And if you are finding this podcast helpful, you can help support me. Please jump into the podcast notes. There, you'll find a link to a Venmo and a PayPal, and you can help support future episodes of No Drop. The summer is here. Enjoy the roads, and until next time, ride safe.